Welcome to the first Money, Justice, and Spirituality Monthly Forum. 5 potent tips to get your financial life in gear with René Nourse, certified financial planner and the founder of Urban Wealth Management and Smart Women Savvy Money. I am so excited to be here with you this evening. And Money, Justice, and Spirituality was born in March of this year when I produced the Money, Justice, and Spirituality Symposium. We had 16 interviews with incredible leaders, and we all learned so much from our time together. The purpose of the event was to amplify your love and prosperity to make a profound difference in the world. And here's what Dr. Gilda Jefferson said. All of the speakers, phenomenal. I've truly enjoyed the diversity and passion displayed. The topics, questions, and discussions were timely and thought-provoking. So in case you missed it, I will put a link in the chat with a code so you can get half off and own all of those recordings. It was really an amazing event with so much insight and inspiration. So I invite you to have that in your own library. I'm Susan Shloss. I'm a certified money coach, and I am delighted to be your host this evening. I have over 25 years in financial services and a lifetime of spiritual practice. And I love bringing together the practical and the spiritual, the feminine and the masculine to help people of all ethnicities, gender identifications, sexual preferences, abilities, and ages to have breakthroughs in their relationship with money so that they can bring their gifts into the world. And this is an inclusive space where it is safe to talk about money, to be yourself, and where everyone is welcome. So welcome. Now I would like to welcome our amazing guest speaker, René Nourse. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Rather than reading out her bio, I am going to have a little conversation with her so she can share with you from her own experience how she got to where she is and a little bit about her. So René, can you please share with us what brought you to creating this amazing organization that you have, Urban Wealth Management?
First off, thank you very much for having me on here. I'm so blessed since she was our speaker last month on that great topic for our Smart Women Savvy Money group. But I started Urban Wealth Management after having been in major wealth firms for 25 years. And I made that change because I did not just want to focus on managing people's money for investments, because I often got all kinds of questions about things that were going on in their financial lives, and they wanted advice about certain things. In addition to that, I wanted to create an environment that was supportive of women and focused primarily on working with women, because the financial industry has not been supportive. Women have been overlooked and underserved, whether they are clients or employees. And so my objective was to focus on working with women, not at the exclusion of men, but it's primarily women. And I want to, and I have an all-women team, and I am looking to expand it. So at the end of the day, even if someone wants to invest their assets, their money, and they want to build their wealth, we still need to know, what are your financial goals? What are your financial planning desires first and foremost? Then we can talk about building out your wealth.
Very powerful. I love hearing about that. And then you created the Smart Women Savvy Money Club, And what was it that inspired you to do that?
Well, we wanted to ensure that all women are smart. That's why we called it Smart Women, because we tend to be multitaskers too. But we wanted to make sure that women get savvy about managing their money, their financial life. And so I started that club about 8 years ago. And we host monthly webinars and we post blogs on a variety of lifestyle related topics. It's just not about finance and investments. It could be that you are concerned about needing to know what and who will be the caregiver for your parents. We talk about long-term care. We talk about understanding your employee benefits. We talk about the importance of having estate planning. So we invite, which is also very supportive, all of the speakers for our Smart Women Savvy Money group are women. We want women to relate to women, and we want to make sure that that's also an opportunity for any of the women who are in our group to connect with those women if they want some additional services outside of what we offer.
And so it sounds like your primary focus around the social justice piece is women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Women and diversity. So, you know, when you are a woman of color, you're getting double slammed and bammed as a result. But even as women, which we're going to talk about here in our presentation today, is why this is important to focus on women and supporting women in this space, because of the fact that we have some tremendous issues about managing our finance because we're not being given the appropriate details. And we're not also making as much money as our males are. So we will talk about that. And that's why it's important for smart women to get savvy about managing your money and your financial life.
All right, let's jump into your presentation, Renee. I'm so excited to learn.
Well, very good. I'm excited to share these. And so I would suggest if anybody has any questions to go ahead and put it in the chat folder. And typically it could be that your question might be answered as I go into the next stage of this discussion. So we'll keep it there. And I definitely want to make sure that I'm addressing what some of your key points and issues that you want to discuss. So we'll get that straight. All right. Okay, so first off, we want to look at what our objectives are. And if you ever come into our site, you'll see this, this promotion that we always say gig. That doesn't mean you're doing any entertainment. It means get in gear, get your financial life in gear. And so for women, whatever stage that you're in right now, we need you to get in gear, get your financial life in gear. And the reason why this is really important is because, and we are going to cover a variety of topics that will address this. Before I do that, I have to do this disclosure because we are SEC registered. And also, just so that you know, this is not a promotion of our firm, which also is in there based on the fact that Susan is having us to come in here today. So with that said, here's where we're going to get started. Why is this important? Well, you know, in the United States, we are a consumer-driven country. However, unfortunately, there is not an acknowledgement and financial literacy that is even taught in schools. In other countries, they are. There's just a few states here in the United States that do focus on that. But as a result of that, we need to have a higher financial health and well-being than what we are experiencing here in the US. It's not as healthy as it could or should be. And here's some of the reasons why. Nearly 80% of Americans, as you see, live paycheck to paycheck. that's independently of the COVID. Obviously, that really changed a lot of our lives and our cycles, but that was well before that. Additionally, almost 60% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. And I call it their rainy day account, their backup account. If you have some emergencies, you want to make sure that you have adequate funds set aside. Now, good news and bad news. Everybody is living longer. Did you all know that just 2 weeks ago, the oldest person in the world was 119 years old, and she passed away. We live longer, and that's why it's so important to understand the intelligence that you need to have in order to maintain your financial life. Now, 1/4 of working Americans have no retirement savings. And as it turns out, also as far as women, which I'll show that later, less than 50% of women have retirement savings accounts. And that's because we are multitaskers. We're always taking care of our families, friends, family members, or kids, whatever. We do need to make that as a priority. And understand that also our net worth, which is everything you own minus everything you owe, whether you have real estate investments, but you have a mortgage on it. So that house might be worth $1 million, but you owe $800,000. Your net worth is just $200,000 as an example. So it's important to understand how you and what you need to do in order to build up your net worth. So here's some examples of what the average net worth is here in the US. Now, those numbers are small relative to the amount of assets that we need to have in order to maintain our lifestyle. Now, for us as women, we have a bigger challenge. Number one, as I mentioned, as we all know, that women live longer. That's always been the case. And these numbers are going up pretty consistently. And as you can see here, the average life expectancy right now has gone up. And it's higher for women versus men. For women right now who are age 65 or older, right now, the average life expectancy is currently 86. And if you're age 70, it's 87.5. Interestingly enough, I just had dinner with a longtime, I call her my second mom. She was my mom's one of my mom's best friends. My mom passed away in 2017. This woman is 98 years old. And we have, I'm sure any of you can raise your hand if you think about and say, okay, how many of you have family members that are 90, 95, 100? I bet all of you do have someone in your life that's in that age group. And thinking about this now, how the healthcare industry has really picked up and is significantly better than what it was, let's say, when our parents or our aunties were born. But they're living longer, and that means you are going to be living longer. But the challenge is that we tend to have less working years because on average, we tend to be the primary ones that are raising our families and our kids. And we're taking time off, or we might be taking care of parents. We're taking time off. So we don't have as many years where we have our earnings built into our financial life. It's due to family responsibilities. And still, even though there has been a push up on this, we still are earning on average less than men, 21% less than men. And unfortunately, there's been less engagement in getting our financial lives in gear because there hasn't been a significant focus on working with or women. And this is true. It hasn't gone away in all the years that I've been in this industry. The average age of widowhood, 80% of men die married and 80% of women die single. They are widowed, typically, or maybe they've never married, but the majority of them have been married. So There's more that you need to be aware of. We're just not in a recession right now. There is still a she-cession. And what that means is that still we are dealing with the fact that our gender pay is still off. Even though you might have the same background, history, and also your degree, we're still being paid less than what our male counterparts are being paid. And women, and especially women of color, have been severely impacted. There still is some major differences in what that is. So it's really important, because we tend to be leaders in family care for kids or for parents. We need to definitely be aware of what kind of impact that's going to have in our lives. So here's some good things though. In spite of the fact that we had that 2020 with COVID, there has been a major impact, obviously, here on women. It's raised the bar for the need of what women are. And a lot of us are now working virtually. We're Zooming it the majority of time. And so a lot of companies are finally recognizing the importance that we can still be very, very impactful, being able to work from home. We still get a lot of things done, but we need to be able to have that ability to do that. Now, most of the time, the majority of the time, and this was kind of interesting in doing background check on this. This is based on the Census Bureau, that nearly a third of women out-earn their male partners. That's before we start our families, because we're high level in terms of our background and our abilities to step in and take over the roles in a corporate, or whether it's corporate or small business, to take over, and we tend to get paid. But as soon as we start our families and we have to take time off and we have to put our energy and our focus on those families, that's when our income gets impacted. And we still earn less than that. So we need to step up, and you can see what those numbers are. On average, women are still earning more than 20% less than men, or about 20%. But for women of color, they're earning 40% less. So we are needing to be in this next phase of wealth and legacy. And this is something that is extremely important. Despite the fact that we had the COVID situation that occurred, a lot of women who were either laid off or they decided that they weren't going to work for their companies anymore, they started businesses. We are the next phase of wealth and legacy, and it is known that at the end of this decade, women are going to control 3/4 of this country's wealth, primarily from inheritances, from having businesses. We are going to see an increase in that. And as you all know, just here in these first 2 years of 2020, we've had a lot of women come into some major leadership positions. So this is another reason why it's really important for us to get an understanding and a knowledge base about managing financial life. And as you can see here, 40% of US businesses are women-owned. That number is going up also. And that's how much they generated in 2020. The numbers went up a lot more. And they're in that process of going up a lot more here in 2022. So these are the figures right now in terms of the value of assets that are controlled by genders. It still is the majority of men, but we're going to start to see that shift over, that women will start to step in and be in higher control of it. Yet another reason why we need to get on board as women to understand how to manage our financial life. Yet there is still a disconnect. We're falling short in the game of financial management. As you can see here, elderly women, they do represent a larger number of those living in poverty. Those that are in the retirement years, 87% of those in poverty are women. We live longer, yet obviously we've not adequately prepared for the likelihood of longevity. And poverty is a woman's issue. So we need to get on the other side of that. So here we're going to run over the 5 simple steps that we're going to address. We want to have less stress. You want to identify what are some easy breezy steps to take. Some of these you are all knowledgeable about already, but just never really were told or confirmed that, yes, that is right. So we're going to cover those things, and this will make a difference. So please take some good notes. We want to make sure that you implement some of the strategies that have been underutilized. You will see this today and say, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I better pay better attention to this. Now I get it. And at the end of the day, this will help to create the lifestyle you desire and that you deserve. So what we're going to cover in this session is that we want you to be conscientious, be attentive, create some accountability. One of the most important elements, if you are employed, your benefits, your employee benefits can be a key component to building out your wealth. If you are independent contractor, make sure that you have adequate benefits that will take care of you and or your family. That is going to be key because that will also help to build up your financial healthiness. We want you to look at things a little bit differently and understand that how your financial decisions can affect your future. And they will. We also want you to think and do for this today, tomorrow, the next day, the next month. It'll be a lot easier for what we're going to talk about. And finally, use what you already have. You don't have to necessarily create some things. You probably have a lot of these things. If you don't, this is a good way for you to get started on that. And we want you to kiss it. Keep it simply simple. All right. So in your first step, you want to know what's coming in and what's going out. As I always say to a lot of our clients, everybody knows how much money they make. They don't know where their money is going on a monthly basis. So it's a good idea to track it. So just like this woman said, wow, wait a minute, last time I checked, I had X amount of dollars in there. This one is going to our ATM and it's like, what the heck? Where'd all my money go? Didn't look at it to see what they were billed for that month on their credit cards, or if there's an auto bill pay that's coming out of their account. That's the way you want to do it. So the gig tip number 1, track your assets in real time, your dollars, what your spending is. These apps that are listed here are virtual apps, and they're all free. This first one, Wally.me, is run by a woman. This is actually a means for you to do a few things. One is you can also just go directly into your bank account, your credit card accounts, to just check them on a daily basis or once a week to see what kind of activities have taken place. With these apps, you'll get a notification. It'll show up on your cell phone or on your laptop. You'll get a notification, for example, as we know, typically with all credit cards, when you do a credit card transaction, you typically are going to get a pop-up on your cell phone to say, you know, you spent this and this amount. And if it wasn't you, then you know it's a scam and you need to take care of it and contact the credit card company. With this, you'll be able to create your own budget and you'll be able to see if you are on track with meeting your budget goals for that month, for that week, whatever you want to set up. And the reason why this is important is that it will, as I mentioned, you can even set alerts, you can get notifications, and it helps with the B word, budget word, not the B that you might be thinking about. But here, I'm just going to show you just a template. It doesn't mean that that's the way that you would want to spend your money, but just to give you an idea about how you can establish a budget for yourself. This is going to be a really important process because everybody should have sufficient funds saved for their backup, rainy day, emergency. And the best way to do it is to look at how much money do you need to spend every month? What is your rent or your mortgage, your insurance costs, your auto coverage, whatever. That is what we call the needs that you need to have at least, let's say, just in this case, doesn't mean that that's the case. I'm just using this as an example. So someone could say, well, I need half of what I earn, what I bring home to pay my expenses. And so with that, then you can also designate that they want to set aside some funds for their savings account. And maybe there's some outstanding debt. So they set aside 20%. The wants are, in this case, maybe for travel. We also want to make donations to charitable organizations and foundations. These are just examples. Put them into 3 different budgets, and you can determine the most important is how much do you need to have to take care of what we call non-discretionary expenses, the things that you need to pay for. Discretionary is doing things that you don't need, but you want. And so we want to make that as a priority. So that is a good means of figuring out what is going to be the best way for you to build out your financial life as the beginning starts. So the next tip is get on the tax planning trail. We just got over the tax planning series here. It was April 18th, just a month ago, where you had to submit your taxes unless you obviously got an extension. But there are some things that you can be doing during the course of the year to help reduce what your taxes are, or at least be in control of it. Now, first off, we've had 3 major tax law changes just in 5.5 years. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is supposed to be going away at the end of 2025. As you might recall, there was a reduction in the federal taxes and in some other areas as well. All of those are supposed to change and go away and potentially go back to what they were before. So just be aware of that. The Secure Act was specifically set up to address the issues for retirements and being able to save more into retirement and to work for a longer period of time, which was really important because the government understood that the majority of US employees did not have adequate funds saved for retirement. And so that's why they made some changes. And of course, as we know with the CARES Act, due to the coronavirus, there was some relief that was provided. And if any of you were in that position where you accessed your accounts, your retirement accounts, the rules, which I'll cover just very, very briefly, the rules are still in place for the 3 years after that COVID hit. For the Secure Act, the most important thing to know is that they changed the required minimum distribution rule from age 70.5 to 72, meaning that you have to take money out of your retirement accounts because you haven't paid taxes on it. And IRS and the state, if you're in a state that you have to pay taxes on, they want to get the taxes. However, there is a potential change. Right now, there is a ruling that might be approved to rise it up to age 75 now. Again, for those same rules, because oftentimes people don't have sufficient money saved for retirement. And so we should hear about that this year to see if they're going to raise that from age 72, which they just did 2 years ago, to now maybe 75. The inherited IRA beneficiary rules changed. IRA contribution rules can now be done forever. If you are still working, maybe you only earn $10,000 for the year and you're working part-time, you can still contribute to an IRA and take a tax deduction. That was a major rule that changed. You could not do that before. Once you turned 70.5, you couldn't put any more money into your retirement account, into your IRA. Somebody could be 92, still working part-time, and then they can still put money into their IRA account. If you are working for an employer, you don't have to, you can still obviously contribute to that on an ongoing basis. And there can be a withdrawal from your retirement accounts if you have a newborn or even an adopted child. And that will allow you to take out per person. Say if you are married and you have a new child or you've adopted one, you both can take money out of $10,000 each. And there's no taxes or penalties. That's a big plus. And then for 529 plans, now that other big rule that was changed is that you can pay off your student loan debt. So that's important. If you have your kids or grandkids, they can pull money out to pay off student loan. The CARES Act, which I won't go into too much there because that special tax rule went away in 2020, but they did give you a 3-year period of time. If you took money out of your retirement accounts, there was no penalty, no taxes, unless you didn't pay it back over that 3-year period of time. So if any of you have done that, or if you know someone to do that, that has done that, just make sure that they definitely speak to their accountant to make sure that they are paying it back, and even if they don't pay it all the way back, then they're only going to be taxed on the portion that doesn't get paid back. That was a major rule that helped a lot of families who needed to have access to funds because they were laid off or someone in their family got really sick and they needed some additional funds. And so this part helps quite a bit. Now, also the retirement plans, your 401k, if you have a 401k, whether you are working for an employer or you set up your own, it does not matter if your employer matches your contributions or not. Oftentimes talk to people and they say, well, my employer only matches 3% of what I put in, and that's all they put in is 3% of their pay. Or they'll say, my employer doesn't match, so I'm not putting any money in there. It doesn't matter. If your employer is matching, that's an additional amount that could go in there, but you need to take care of yourself. And it does give you the opportunity to reduce your taxable income on both the federal and the state level. If you're putting in $10,000 a year, that's going to reduce your taxable income by $10,000. And of course, hopefully you get it invested, it's going to be growing for you. If one is turning age 50 in this year, you can sign up for what's called the catch-up, where you can put in additional funds over and above what the maximum contributions are for this year. For this year, the maximum contribution is $20,500. But if you are age 50 and older, you can put in an additional $6,500. So somebody could get a tax deduction of $27,000 and they are actually able to put in more money into their account. So it's always important also when you leave your employer, I always say, take your nickels and dimes with you. Do not leave it there at your former employer. Put it into your new employer's plan or roll it into your own IRA account. So now let's just talk about the tax side. Contributions, as I mentioned, of course, of retirement plans is tax deductible, but it's tax deferred. What that means is that you're still going to have to pay taxes at a later date. So it is important to also understand the differences with tax-free, tax deductible, tax deferred. Do you want assets that are tax-free? Yes, indeed. And how do you do that? Because tax-free will allow you to access those funds and never have to pay taxes at all on it. Now, you probably have heard these terms before, Roths, Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks. Bottom line is that the contributions that you make to those plans are not tax deductible. That's the difference between going and putting money into a Roth. It's not tax deductible, but when you pull that money out, plus whatever it's earned, it is tax-free. And so that's why it's really important to establish that, because for retirement, a lot of times people say, I didn't know I have to pay taxes on my Social Security and my pension or the money that is coming out of I didn't know I have to pay all those taxes on it. It's coming out of a Roth. It's not taxable. So if you have a employer's plan, a lot of them do have a Roth 401k component. And as I mentioned, it's not subject to it's not tax deductible, but when you pull it out later, it's not subject to taxes. So in 2022, the maximum contribution is $20,500, includes the catch up. You can split it up and put a little bit of money into the Roth 401k and the bulk of it into the traditional 401k. So for example, let's say you're putting in the maximum, 27,000. You could say, okay, I just want to put 10,000 into the Roth. And then the other 17,000, I want to put into the traditional 401k because that will reduce your taxable income. You still get your employer's match, which goes into the traditional side of 401k. But when you leave, you can roll over that money that's in the Roth 401k into a Roth IRA. And it's not taxable. Now, the Roth IRA side, though, is really key because there is something that's called a 5-year rule. And the 5-year rule means that as long as you've had the Roth IRA open for 5 years, you have access to whatever you've contributed to that Roth IRA. You can pull it out at any time, no matter what your age is. So for example, let's say over a 6-year period of time, you put in your maximum contributions, or it could be any amount, but let's say you put in a total over a 5-year period of time. I'll use that instead. And you have deposited over that 5 years a total of 15,000. Now the account is worth 30,000. Emergency comes up or you need to access fund, you can pull out all of the contributions that you have made and it's not taxable. The gain on it, however, can be pulled out and is not taxable as long as you're 59 and a half and as long as the IRA, the Roth IRA, has been open at least 5 years. So the rules can be extremely beneficial, especially, which I say to a lot of my millennials, the younger ones who are looking to buy a home, for example. They can put money into a Roth IRA, that account can grow, and based on the current rules, they can pull out up to, they can pull out all of the contributions that they've made, plus up to an additional $10,000. And there's no taxes or penalties on that. So for example, let's say your kid is 35, interested in buying a house, has had a Roth IRA, and maybe you even put money in there in his account to help him build that up. And a total contribution over the years has been $20,000. And the $20,000 in his account is now worth $60,000. He can pull out all of that $20,000 plus $10,000 of those gains. He has access to $30,000, no taxes, no penalties, because obviously he's a lot younger than 59 and a half. So understanding, and there's a lot more benefits of being in the Roths, which we won't go too more in, but at the end of the day, being into Roths are extremely beneficial because that is a great way for you to get tax-free aspects and wealth in your life. And that is especially important for retirement. So, and it's tax-free not only to the owner, but to the beneficiaries, whoever you leave as a beneficiary. No taxes. Our next step, tip 4, healthcare plan options. This is an area that a lot of people are not aware of. Some plans are just not for today's health planning, but for your future needs and for your future income needs. There's a difference between FSA and HSAs. Both of those are tax advantage. You put money into it, the employers also do a match, and it allows people to save money for qualified medical expenses. But there's a difference between the two. The FSA, flexible spending, will provide you with pre-tax contributions that can be made at the state and the federal level. There's two different types, the health and dependent care. You can use money that's in the FSA to pay for childcare. It can also pay for an adult care. Let's say you're helping a family member, a parent. You can pull money out and pay for that, and it's no taxes. There's an employer match also, where you're putting money in, it's tax deductible. However, the big difference is you gotta use it or you will lose it if you don't use it within that 1 year period. Generally, the employers will provide you about 60 days after the close of that year for you to access those funds and use it. So for example, with FSAs, monies can be paid for medical care expenses, dental, and as I mentioned, dependent care expenses. Monies can be used for that. But if you put a lot of money in there, plus the employer match, and if you have not used it within 60 days in that next year, even though it's your money, the employer takes it back. Health savings accounts, though, are a trifecta. Number one, it is an excellent planning vehicle for not only current, but for your future healthcare related expenses. There is tax deductibility, just like there is with the FSA. The contributions are federally tax deductible. And depending on the state that you're in, the deductibility might be available. In California, unfortunately, it's not tax deductible at the California level. However, the employers can match the health savings account, and it's tax deductible to the business owner. So even if you're self-employed and you set up an HSA, whatever match you put in for your own or for your staff, it's tax deductible. However, the other difference is that it has to be HDHP, a high deductible health plan. With high deductible health plans, typically you're looking at lower premiums that you would need to pay on that health insurance. And, which I'll share with you what those rules are. They change typically on an annual basis. The other big important factor is that if you don't use all the money in that year, you don't lose it. It stays in the account for as long as you want it or need it to be in there. The contribution limits are higher. You can also invest the money. You can put it into mutual funds while it's in there. It's typically not all of it. There generally is a rule that you have to leave a couple of thousand liquid in cash, but the rest of it can be invested. And that means that you can actually grow it quite a bit. So here are the rules. The FSA, you can use it or lose it. If they do allow you about 60 days after the next year. And if there's any money left in there, you can roll over $550 that will go into the next year, into that year. So for example, you have a total of $1,000 that was left over for 2021. And you have up to, based on what your employer says, okay, if you use that money by February 28th, you can use some of those funds to pay off your expenses that you had in 2021. But if you have $1,000 there, you can only use $550. The rest of that you deposited goes to the employer. So it's really important to understand what those rules are. There is also, there isn't any ability to invest any of the monies because when you put it in, they basically want you to take it out. And these are the health plans, how much you can put in. For the HSA, they do have to be paired with a high deductible health plan. That means that the deductible has to be at least $1,400 if you're a single person and $2,800 for a family. However, that's the deductible. And you can make contributions up to $3,650. That's fully tax deductible. And if you're over age 55, you can put in an additional $1,000. If it's for a family, it's $7,300. And if it's a catch up, another $1,000. Again, you never lose it. You never use it or lose it. And it can allow you to grow your account value by investing those funds. You also can use whatever money is in there to pay for premiums, such as long-term care. You can also use the funds to take care, of course, dental expenses, your regular healthcare expenses. And after you turn 65, and there is a change that's also looking to take place with IRS ruling, that they're going to maximize the ability to access HSAs. The rules currently are once you hit 65, even though you're still working, you can't participate in HSAs. Now they're looking to change that rule because a lot of people are working longer. But in any event, right now, when you take the money out for any medical expenses, whether you are retired or not, it's not taxable. However, once you are retired, at age 65 or older, if you pull the money out and it's non-medical expenses, it's just taxed as regular income. So it's another resource for retirement usage. All right, our last tip is how to get your financial life in gear. And the best way to do that is to get your team in place. You are the CEO of your own life. And it's important for you to create your corporate team to work with professionals that will help you make the best decisions. Number one, having an accountant or tax planner is key. We have seen so many changes in the tax law rules. And so there are some upcoming ones. And so your accountant, your tax planner can give you advice about what's the best way for you to manage your finances for the year. If you're expecting to make a certain amount and they say, well, you know, if you get this or you pull this money out or you're selling some investments or you're selling in real estate, this is what kind of impact that there is going to be. So it's important that you get that advice. Obviously, working with a financial advisor, financial planner, they will be able to give you also a great deal of input and insight about what are the best steps for you to take to manage your financial life. Attorney for estate planning is key. So many people, more than 50% of the people here in the United States don't have a estate plan. Whether it is a will or a living trust, you need to also have healthcare advocate who's going to step in to handle your finances if you're incapacitated. It's important to have that taken care of. So working with an attorney, an estate planning attorney, and sometimes with your employer benefits, they will offer that as one of your benefits to get an estate plan. And working with insurance professionals to make sure that you have adequate coverage for your properties, for your auto, and even as far if you are self-employed, you want to make sure that you have the adequate health insurance for yourself and your staff, as well as for your business, to make sure that you have E&O coverage, any liability, that type of thing. So those are important. And the best ways to do that is to connect the dots by getting some referrals from some of your friends and colleagues. The best way to find them, though, oftentimes is to do a background check. And these are on site, online. Pretty much any state that you're in, you can go in and just type in insurance professionals, and there will be a website that will pick up. So what you see here for California, for example, that is that website. If you want to get an idea about the financial planner or advisor, that site, which is the SEC area. If they're just an investment advisor, you can go to BrokerCheck. Attorneys, that's also California. And then for accountants, no matter where you are, it's good, you get a referral, but you want to look and make sure what is their background. Have they ever been sued? Have they ever been in a situation where they have not given the right advice to their clients? So with that said, we are at the back end of here. And so if any of you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands. Thank you.
Renee, thank you so much. So let's go ahead and stop your screen share here.
Sure.
And just invite people to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask any questions. And I've also placed in the chat the links to Renee's site where you can reach out to her through her contact form if you'd like to talk about your retirement planning and any of these areas. And also the Smart Women Savvy Money Club. I invite you to join that for more amazing information. All right, floor is open. That was so rich. It was really helpful to focus on those really important pieces.
Great. Thank you. Well,
I have a question, Renee.
Mhm.
Estate planning, excuse me. Well, executor, the executor of your estate. You know, at one point, I had my sister assigned, but you know, she has a family dynamic going on her own, and now I'm not comfortable with placing that responsibility on her. So I'm wondering, is there a type of service, or is there like a retainer that I can get someone to be the executor of my estate, maybe pay a monthly fee? I don't know how that works. Does that make sense?
Well, that's a good question. And one of the things that we definitely recommend, even if you have an estate plan, that you should review it every 3 to 5 years. Just look at what you already created. And the reason is because, just like the example that you stated, I'm not real comfortable with having this person that is my executor. You can go in and change your estate planning documents to name someone else. Oftentimes what people are not aware of is maybe they have designated that someone's going to be a beneficiary, or someone's going to be their healthcare advocate, or someone is going to be the person that they have assigned to oversee their financial life. There's nothing wrong with you being able to, if there is an individual, yes, you can change it and designate someone else. Outside of that, there are groups called fiduciaries, and the fiduciary firms are hired essentially to step in and oversee someone's, not just their estate planning, but also some of their lifestyle related activities. And so, yes, and they do charge a fee for that because they are having to step in and do, you know, a bit of work. So you also estate planning attorneys also can act as your individual to oversee your estate as well. They will charge a fee. But even if you name someone, because even the estate planning attorney, if you're naming someone as your executor and as your trustee, let's say, oftentimes the estate planning attorney will recommend that there is a fee that will be paid to that person, whether it's a family member or it is another professional, because it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work.
Yes, I already have that in mind. I'm just feeling guilty about putting the responsibility on her. That's really what you know, she says she's perfectly fine with it. But I mean, she's got grandkids. Pretty soon she'll have great grandkids. I'm like, I'm thinking maybe it would just be better if it would just be a neutral party so that she wouldn't feel the burden of the responsibility of that. And I'm willing to pay I don't know how, like a retainer, I guess, a monthly fee or annual, I don't know, however it works. But anyway, okay.
Yeah, it's usually an annual, but bottom line is that, she may still be named obviously as a beneficiary, but putting them in that role as an executor or a trustee, it is a lot of work. And so you want to be able to name someone that you trust, that will be able to step in and manage, that aspect of your financial life. So it's good. Anybody that has, as I said, I recommend that people look at their estate planning documents, because at least every 3 to 5 years. And when they find out, they said, oh my gosh, I named this person as my trustee. I forgot they passed away. Or I have this person named as my beneficiary on this. I forgot I divorced him. Things change in your life. They never stay the same. So it is important to stay on top of that and make sure that you're able to view that.
Great question. Thank you for bringing that element into our conversation, Marielle.
Thank you.
Sure.
And Marty says, what drew me, I'm interested in the bones of investing. My returns and results have been disappointing in a variety of investment vehicles, suggestions for education, tips, guidance.
Well, I would say that number one, if it's in reference to what we've been experiencing this year so far, because as we know, it's been a tough time between the inflationary cycle that we're in and that war that's going on, and the rise in interest rates, which ultimately will be positive in the long end. But the most important element is, and this is something that we have as a mandatory process for our clients, is to have and provide a risk survey. We want to know, what is your idea of risk? And there's some specific questions that we go through. You get an answer back that says anywhere from 1 to 99, 99 being the highest amount of risk tolerance that you have, where you don't mind markets being down by a certain amount. And then from there, a recommendation is made. What is the appropriate type of investment account to have? The other thing is, there's a difference between trading and investing. When one is trading, they're looking at it constantly, and buying and selling on a constant basis, daily, weekly. They're doing a lot. When you're investing, you are investing, you're putting your money in, and you're keeping it there for long term. Long term is 3 to 5 years at least, that timeline, keeping it in that timeline. Because as we know, as an example this year, how many of you think that Amazon is going out of business? Amazon stock is down tremendously. It's down about 25, 30%. It's not going out of business. Netflix is another one. Do you think Netflix is going to go out of business?
Disney's cheap.
Uh-huh.
Buy.
Yeah. Netflix is down 70%. Yeah. So, and I'm going to write a blog about this to say, yeah, the markets are down, that is negative, but here's the positive side of it. And that's why it's so important to be looking at investing. Even if you own stocks that are down right now, doesn't mean that they're going out of business. It just means that the markets are down, and they're down temporarily. So those are some of the key elements, I would say, that you would want to make sure that, and particularly with women, we tend to want to have our investments, our dollars aligned with our value system. And a lot of women are stepping up. They want ESG and SRI, socially responsible, environmental, social, government. They want to make sure they don't want to invest in companies that are not hiring women, for example, or not paying them well, as an example. But anyway, just aligning what your risk, that is important. That should be a preliminary step before you're doing any investing. And also knowing what your timeline is. If you say, okay, I'm going to invest, but I need this money in 2 years. No, do not invest. Put it in a bank. Put it in a savings account. Don't invest it. And that's why I tell a lot of clients. They're like, why? I said, no, because we don't know what markets are going to do. So timeline is important.
All right, thank you for that question, Marty. It's an important one. We can take one more question.
I have one.
Okay, we'll take 2 more questions, Jean and then Kathy. Go ahead, Jean.
So I probably need some sort of, I don't know, like I have such a block to all of this. I am so much on the spiritual, emotional, social type of, intelligence side. My mother's a financial planner and she, I don't know, doesn't teach me this stuff, hasn't taught me this stuff. So it's all kind of overwhelming. How would you advise someone who feels this way? Like this is all just like a different language. How can we empower ourselves to feel like we can understand this and can win at this game? Is it just getting started and getting educated and starting to invest? And how do I shift my mindset?
Well, that's a good question. And I would say, because as I mentioned at the beginning here, even though, as you said, your mom is a financial planner, that there, and here in the US, there still hasn't been significant focus on financial advice, financial literacy. There's finally beginning to be a major step up in that space where there are classes, there's sessions that are providing people with financial and investment advice and services and understanding. And definitely as far as investments are concerned, it is key that you have a very strong understanding about investing. But even when you're talking about investing, and I always say this, you need to start at the financial planning door. If you're talking about investing, what is your reason why you want to invest it? What's the timeline that you're looking at? What is your risk tolerance? How much downside would you be comfortable with that's not going to freak you out and really get you in a position or a role where you don't feel comfortable with it? There are a number of organizations also now that you will see that are offering financial literacy. Additionally, the FPA, Financial Planning Association, which is a national organization, and they have several of them in different cities all across the country. And at a number of local schools, universities, they are offering also sessions in financial and investment literacy for adults. So those are some good places to go to as well. And there's, that's going to be your best option. And if your mom's not comfortable yet, being able to share that with you, she might even be able to give you a referral to somebody who can help you answer those questions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Our community college often has someone who is doing that kind of education, especially toward women.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say the community colleges, there's more of those that do offer that service. And, it's not a lot of money that you have to pay for those. And this generally, it is financial planners that are teaching those sessions. Financial advisors, of people who have that background. So that's a great way for you to get to that point.
Do you see that a lot? Is it a phenomenon? Do you understand the reason why? It just seems like, I mean, is there a metaphor or a parallel? Like maybe literacy is a similar phenomenon, that sometimes people just don't get access due to social justice issues or whatever.
Yeah. Well, we're starting, and as I mentioned at the beginning, because in many other countries, there is financial literacy that is taught in elementary schools, which in elementary, junior high, high schools, a lot of it, unfortunately, here in the US, they don't teach it until you get into college, which is not accurate. Kids know how to spend money. You go to the store with them and say, Mom, Dad, can you get me this and that? And I remember years ago, my daughter is 36. And so we were at a store one day and she said, she wanted me to buy X amount of dollars. She knew how much money I made. And so she said, this is only $25,000. So it's like, she said, you make more money than that. I said, oh gosh, let's have a financial literacy. And I started teaching her about financial literacy by having her to look at my bills on a monthly basis and write those checks out so she could see the total amount. Doesn't matter how much money I made, how much am I spending? Yeah, that made a big difference. So
Is a really relevant topic as well. And of course, as a money coach, the emotional and the spiritual aspect of the relationship with money. So
yeah,
another area of support.
absolutely.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, Kathy.
Right. I just want first I wanted to comment on when you want to choose somebody as an executor, not only it may turn into a lot of work, if it's someone close, like recently my mother passed, then there's the emotional the grieving and the mourning, along with taking care of business as well. Oh my God.
Yes.
What a roller coaster. So I could see the value if you could find someone that you trust that isn't that close.
Mm.
I can see the value of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the
someone who, I'm sorry, I just wanted to mention this other thing about that. Someone who has a propensity for it, like my mom passed in December. My brother, who is also a certified financial planner, is the executor, and he's really comfortable in that realm, of handling all of it. So that's really helpful too. Sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
And second thing was, at the beginning, you were mentioning the statistics about women and work and income. And the thing that came to mind was having a bit of compassion for our history on that score, because men were taught, and we were part of that dynamic, that they were the providers, and the little woman stayed home and cared for the house and kids, etc. It was a good plan for the most part, but the rest is history. But I think we need to have a little bit of compassion for ourselves. Might be a good idea, to consider that, before we get all up in arms and, march out there and picket picket line, I don't know.
Yeah,
There's a lot,
that's an interesting point.
yeah, it's very complex.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, thank you all for joining us. And Renee, I so appreciate everything you brought to us this evening. It's so important and relevant.
Thank you for having me. And thanks everyone for your time. Have a wonderful week. And we will talk to you soon again, hopefully. Take care.
Feel free to reach out to either one of us. Yes.
Thank you both. Thank you all, ladies. Good evening.
All
Good evening.
Take care. Have a wonderful evening.